The certified letter arrived on a Wednesday in April, forwarded twice, the envelope soft at the corners from handling, the kind of letter that has been trying to find you for a long time. I almost didn't open it. I had been getting a lot of mail lately that I didn't want. A lease renewal, a dental bill, the particular quiet accumulation of adult life. And I set it on the counter and made coffee first. When I finally picked it up, the return address said Morrison, Hale & Greer, Attorneys at Law, Columbus, Ohio. I didn't know any attorneys in Columbus. My father had lived in Columbus. My father had been dead for 7 years. I opened it standing at the kitchen counter, still holding my coffee. The letter was from a paralegal named Jennifer Castillo. It said that in the course of consolidating client files following a firm merger, they had located an executed last will and testament for one Thomas Allen Morrison, deceased, in which I, Claire Morrison, was named as a co-primary beneficiary. They had been attempting to reach me at a previous address for approximately 5 years without success, and were now writing to inform me that the estate file remained open, and that I had legal rights that had not yet been resolved. My coffee went cold while I read it 3 times. My name is Claire Morrison. I am 34 years old, and for 7 years I have believed, have had no reason not to believe, that my father left almost nothing behind. That's what my brother Nathan told me. That's what the $12,000 Venmo payment he sent me 2 weeks after the funeral said, in the memo line, in his exact handwriting. Dad's estate, your share. I was 27, I was grieving, and Nathan was 31 and already managing everything, and I did what a grieving 27-year-old does when an older sibling takes control. I stepped back and I trusted him. I want you to hold that detail, the Venmo payment, the memo line, $12,000, your share. Because it is the thing I keep coming back to. Not the number itself. The confidence of it. The way it arrived like a closed door. Stay with me. Because what Jennifer Castillo had found in a merged law firm's filing cabinet was the reason for everything I am about to tell you. And my father had put it there on purpose. I need to tell you about my father before I tell you what Nathan did. Because Thomas Morrison is the reason this story matters, and the reason it ends the way it ends. My father ran a small precision manufacturing company for 22 years. Custom metal components, aerospace clients, not glamorous, not a name anyone outside the industry would know, but built carefully from nothing, over 2 decades of work that I watched him put in from the time I was old enough to understand what work was. He was a methodical man, not loud, not expressive in the way people expect fathers to be in movies, but present in all the ways that actually count. He came to things. He remembered things. He kept his word. He was, as I have come to understand more clearly in the years since he died, a man who had spent his entire adult life thinking several steps ahead, which is why what he did with his attorney in Columbus makes sense in a way it took me a long time to see. Nathan is 4 years older than me. We were not close in the particular way that some siblings are not close. Not hostile, just differently shaped, occupying different orbits, even when we were in the same house. Nathan had worked at Dad's company briefly after college, and left on terms that were never fully explained to me, and after that there was a coolness between him and Dad that everyone in the family acknowledged and nobody discussed. I didn't know the details. I wasn't meant to. Dad was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer when I was 26. He told me in person, at his kitchen table, with the specific directness of a man who has decided that honesty is a form of respect. He told me his prognosis was not good, that he was pursuing treatment, and that he needed me to know. What he did not tell me, what I did not find out until Jennifer Castillo's letter arrived on my kitchen counter 7 years later, was that within 2 weeks of that diagnosis he had driven to Columbus, to an attorney he had used for business contracts over the years, a firm he trusted, and he had made a will. A careful, specific, witnessed, notarized will. He did not tell Nathan he had done this. I believe now that he did not tell Nathan because he already knew what Nathan would do if he found out. My father died 11 months after his diagnosis. He was 61. The last few months were difficult in the way that kind of illness is difficult, and I spent as much time with him as I could manage around my job and the 4-hour drive. Nathan was closer, geographically, and had more access to those final months than I did, which I have since understood was not a coincidence in terms of what happened next. At the funeral, Nathan handled everything. The arrangements, the obituary, the reception. He did all of it efficiently and without consulting me in any meaningful way. And I told myself that this was grief management, that people cope by controlling the controllable things, and I let it go. He gave a eulogy that was 17 minutes long and mentioned me twice, both times in passing, and I told myself that also didn't matter because we were burying our father, and the accounting of a eulogy was not the thing to focus on. 3 days after the funeral, I drove to the family home to pick up some things I had left there over the years. A box of photographs from my childhood. A ceramic piece my mother had made before she passed. A watch my father had specifically told me, more than once in more than one conversation, that he wanted me to have. A simple steel dress watch he'd worn for 30 years, given to him by his own father. I had a key to the house. I tried it at the front door, and it didn't work. Nathan had changed the locks. He told me when I called him that he was managing the estate, and that I would need to go through proper channels to retrieve personal items. I asked him when I could come by. He said he would be in touch. He was not in touch for 11 days, during which time he listed the family home with a real estate agent. I found out from a cousin who saw it on Zillow. I want to give you the complete picture here, because it matters. My father had sold his manufacturing company 14 months before he died. I did not know this at the time. Nathan knew, because Nathan had been managing Dad's business affairs in his final year, when Dad was too ill to handle them himself. The company sold for $680,000. That money went into accounts I did not know existed, and Nathan, as the person managing those accounts with Dad's power of attorney, had access to all of it. The family home sold for $290,000. Dad's personal investment accounts, which I also did not know the full scope of, held another $90,000 at the time of his death. The total estate, the real one, the one that existed in actual bank records and transaction histories, was somewhere in the range of $1,060,000. Nathan sent me $12,000 on Venmo. Dad's estate, your share. When I asked him, once 3 months after the funeral, whether there was more to the estate than I understood, he told me that after the debts, the medical bills, the funeral costs, the estate taxes, and the costs of administering everything, there was very little left, and that $12,000 was a fair split given what he'd had to manage on his own. I was 27 and grieving, and I did not have a lawyer. I believed him. I am not ashamed that I believed him, because I want to be clear about something. Trusting the person who is supposed to be your family is not a character flaw. Using that trust the way Nathan used it is. For 7 years I built a life on the other side of that. I moved twice, changed jobs once, lived carefully because $12,000 disappears faster than you expect, and the assumption that your family was your safety net had been quietly removed without your knowledge. I did not talk about my father's estate because there was something about the way the conversation had closed that made me feel, without being able to name it exactly, that I had missed something I was supposed to fight for and hadn't. And the shame of that was easier to carry quietly than to examine directly. Then Jennifer Castillo found the file. I called the number on her letter the same afternoon. She was professional and careful, and clearly accustomed to delivering information that arrived 7 years late. She told me the will had been executed 14 months before my father's death, witnessed by 2 employees at the law firm, notarized and filed. It named Nathan and me as co-primary beneficiaries, 50% each, explicitly, with no ambiguity in the language. There was an addendum specifically addressing the proceeds from the sale of the manufacturing company, which Dad had apparently anticipated might be a point of contention given the timing of the sale and his illness. The addendum stated, in legal language that Jennifer read to me slowly and clearly over the phone, that the business sale proceeds were to be treated as part of the estate and divided equally, and that any attempt to transfer or encumber those funds outside of the formal estate process would constitute a breach of fiduciary duty. My father had written that addendum. He had written it because he knew. He had sat in an attorney's office in Columbus 14 months before he died and written a legal document that said, in effect, I know what my son might do and I am trying to stop it from here, from this page, from this notary stamp, from as far forward in time as this piece of paper can reach. At the bottom of the will package, in a sealed envelope with my name on it, was a letter. I am going to tell you what it said in the way that matters, not word for word, but in its meaning, which is the same thing. My father wrote that he hoped I was reading this through proper legal channels and not because Nathan had handed it to me, because if I was reading it through an attorney, it probably meant that what he had feared had happened. He wrote that he was sorry he had not been clearer with me while he was alive about what the estate contained, and that he had thought the will would surface naturally, and that he had underestimated how thoroughly someone motivated to bury something can bury it. He wrote that the watch, the steel dress watch his own father had given him, was specifically listed in the personal property schedule attached to the will, with my name on it, and that if Nathan had it, it was mine and always had been. And then near the end of the letter he wrote something that I have read many times since that afternoon in my kitchen, and that I will not read to you exactly because it belongs to me, but I will tell you what it was. He wrote that he had spent his life building something to leave behind, and that the thing he most wanted to leave behind for me was not the money, which he expected would sort itself out eventually, but the knowledge that he had thought about me when he made every decision in his final year. That the will was not primarily a legal document. It was a way of saying, I was thinking of you. I was trying to reach you. I am still trying even from here. I sat with that letter for a long time. I contacted an estate attorney the following week. The legal situation is, as these situations tend to be, complicated and ongoing, and I am not going to tell you the details of a case that has not fully resolved. What I will tell you is this. The documentation that exists, the will, the business sale records, the transfer histories, the Venmo payment and its memo line, tells a clear story, and that story is in the hands of people who are paid to read it clearly. I called Nathan before I called the attorney. I want to be honest that I did this not because I expected a satisfying conversation, but because I needed to hear what he would say when I told him the will had surfaced. There was a pause on the line that lasted long enough to tell me everything I needed to know before he said a single word. Then he said that he had not known about the will, which was the first thing he said. Then he said that he had done the best he could in a very difficult time managing an estate alone, which was the second thing he said. Then he said that he was sure we could work things out between ourselves without involving attorneys, which was the third thing he said. And the last thing I let him finish before I told him that the attorneys were already involved, and that I would be in touch through them, and I keep the letter in my desk drawer, in its original envelope, with my name on the front in my father's handwriting. Not because I need to read it often, because I spent 7 years without a single piece of evidence that I had been thought of at the end of his life, and now I have one, and it belongs to me in a way that nothing Nathan moved or sold or transferred could touch. The watch has not been recovered yet. I am told it may be recoverable. I am told a number of things may be recoverable. I am learning, at 34, that recoverable and recovered are two different words, and that the distance between them is usually patience, which is something my father had in very large supply and which I am trying, in his absence, to inherit. If you have ever been in a room where something was taken from you and the room rearranged itself so quickly that by the time you looked up, everyone had already decided the arrangement was normal, this story is for you. You don't have to have been 27 and grieving to know that feeling. You just have to have been the one who stepped back when they should have stepped forward, and carried the weight of that stepping back for longer than was fair. Tell me in the comments. Has anyone ever taken something from you and counted on your grief or your silence to make it permanent? I read every single one.